Incidentally, on that 40 billion point that the President Trump raised of the money that's supposedly been quote unquote invested in Ukraine, again, it really is worth mentioning this. Firstly, that number includes notional valuing of a vast amount of equipment that was derelict or considered surplus in US long-term storage that would eventually the US would have had to pay to dismantle, which, by the way, is not cheap. That was notionally valued to comply with the Presidential Drawdown Authority legislation to enable it to be transferred. And so a huge amount of that notional 40 billion was equipment that the US was going to have to pay to dispose of in long-term storage, that it got rid of and got huge service from as the US interests in terms of writing down a key strategic adversary. Secondarily, the stuff that was actually paid for in terms of new equipment for Ukraine, or equipment from active stock that then needed to be replaced, which constitutes a certainly significant sum, but by no means that all of, or even the majority of that 340 billion. The vast majority of that new spending, as it were, was spent in American factories with American jobs going back into the American economy. It was not sent to Ukraine. It's been spent in factories all across America, producing everything from Bradley through howitzer barrels, through air defense ammunition, through. So again, this idea that the US has been sending loads of taxpayer money to the Ukrainians is just not true. There's been about 30 billion worth of economic assistance to try and prop up the Ukrainian central bank's ability to continue functioning. Because, of course, when you try and destroy an entire country and level 2 of its cities and subject it to total war conditions and try and black out its power and do all of that kind of stuff and destroy its ability to export its main products, iron and grain, by destroying its ports and blockading it and all of that, then yes, it does put that economy under a lot of strain. So there has been a bit of US financial assistance to the tune of about 34 billion over 3 years to the Ukrainian bank. But those are in loans anyway, which are still owed back to the US. It hasn't just been free money. And the vast majority of financial assistance has actually come from the EU to keep the Ukrainian economy afloat. So again, it has already been, and it's kind of crass, but if you want to look at it this way, it has already been an enormously profitable war for America. It has resulted in a vast injection of money, including a lot of other people's money, because a lot of European funding that has been spent also on aid to Ukraine has also been spent in US factories to buy ammunition to send to the Ukrainians. It's been an enormously profitable war for America. So to turn around and demand an unbelievable amount of Ukraine's GDP that it has left with no return at all. It didn't even say, if you give us this, the US will guarantee Ukraine's territorial integrity, which would be, extortion, but you could at least see, I guess, some logic to it. Yeah, the way it was done, unbelievably crass, and just, I can see why the Ukrainians are turning around and going, well, we just won't accept this. The problem is, as I said, while European countries will try and step up and are desperately trying to figure out among themselves, having also been cut out of negotiations, how we can support without the US playing a major role or even necessarily a role at all, there are just areas where we can't backfill. And of course, if we put troops in as some sort of tripwire to try and enforce an otherwise unenforceable ceasefire and stop the Russians coming rolling through, again, the US removed even its own leverage on that by Excerpt immediately saying that the Article 5 NATO guarantee would not apply to any NATO troops who were sent into Ukraine. So there's not even a tripwire guarantee, which at least might have made the Russians think twice. It's amazing. If you were trying to, in what would previously have been considered a completely unrealistic comedy attempt to demolish the US's own negotiating capacity against both Russia and, by the way, China, and alienate all its allies, I can't really think of what more you would have done in 3 weeks. It's astonishing.